We are so glad you're able to join us today for our next edition of our 49er Industry Chat. My name is Noemi Guevara. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement here at Cal State Long Beach. Before we start our industry chat, just some housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and it will live on our website at csuob.edu/ for your viewing at your own time. And also, if you have any questions for our guest speaker today, if you could use our Q&A box located below to submit any of your questions. And now I would like to introduce you to our moderator. Lucia Cost is a graduate of Cal State Long Beach in the class of 1975 with a degree in Spanish from the College of Liberal Arts. She was also recognized as a distinguished alumna in 2005 and currently serves on our CSUB Alumni Council as our board member. And now I'd like to hand it off to Lucia.
Good afternoon. Travis McPeak is a proud CSULB alum, and he earned his BS in computer science and also his MS in computer engineering. The BS was from Cal State Long Beach, and the master's was from Santa Clara University. Travis works at Netflix as an application security manager. He enjoys building automation that increases security while simultaneously boosting developer productivity. Travis is a primary developer of Bandit and Repokid open source projects and has presented at security conferences, including BlackHat USA, Enigma, and reInvent. He currently serves as the Bay Area Owasp chapter lead, a security advisor for startups, and a mentor for people looking to get into the security field. Joining us from San Jose to lead today's industry chat, please welcome Travis McPeak.
Hello. Thank you all so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be able to come back and speak to CSULB students. It feels like I graduated just yesterday, but in reality, it's been 10 years now. And one of the reasons I want to do this is because when I was graduating, I had so much anxiety. Like, well, what is it that I'm going to do in my career? How am I going to get a job and an opportunity? Will I be able to pursue this thing that I want to pursue? And I want to help students and understand that there's a ton of opportunities. You absolutely will get into this field if you want to, or similar fields that you would enjoy more, and provide some helpful tips that I wish somebody had told me.
Great. Travis, how did you jump into your career after you left CSULB?
Sure, yeah, so I went up to Santa Clara for grad school, and one of the reasons I wanted to do that is because I knew that a way that I could go in my career was in Silicon Valley. There's a ton of opportunities up here. In particular, I knew that I wanted to do computer security, and there was a lot of opportunities for that here. So I wanted to go to Santa Clara in part so that I could start meeting people and building out my network. And they had a great information assurance program, which is a fancy way of saying computer security. And so I studied that for a couple of years, and then I got an internship at Symantec. And then ever since then, I've been working in the industry at various companies, including Symantec, HP, IBM, and Netflix.
Why don't you kind of guide us through some of the successes and pitfalls of your career?
Sure, yeah, totally. So let's see, I'll say one success that meant a lot to me was when I first joined HP, we had this idea. So we were working on an open source thing called OpenStack. And OpenStack is an open source like AWS, like cloud environment. And it was really cool because it's community developed. So you have 2,000 developers working on this thing, and some of them are really good Python developers, and some of them are relatively not as good. And so what we were seeing as security professionals, we're concerned about how do we keep security vulnerabilities out of this thing. And unfortunately, the state when I started working on it was that sometimes you could actually go and run grep, which is an engineering tool, and just find like really bad bugs just by like looking through the code base. And it's so obvious to see these things. We're like, okay, how can we transfer our knowledge to the developers that are making, that are committing these security issues into code? How can we help them to not make these mistakes? So that was the opportunity that I had when I joined HP. And a few of us security folks were in a room and we were discussing this and our approach. And my boss at the time, this guy named Jamie Finnegan, really smart, he got quiet and then he went home and he came back and he had this working prototype for something called Bandit. And so my job was to take Bandit from, you know, this really cool, promising proof of concept and make it into a product, like, you know, not a product we sell, but a product that people can use that addresses the problem. And that was really fun for me in my career to see, you know, this relatively small idea turn into this fully fledged thing that now all kinds of companies use. So I'll talk to people and they're like, oh, Bandit. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was something I worked on. And it's really cool to just see how many people are getting use out of it. Now, in terms of pitfalls, I'll say one thing that was difficult for me was when I was first in my career, I actually started off in QA. And I knew since I was a kid that I wanted to be in computer security, and computer security can feel really hard to get into. Sometimes there's companies don't want to hire people that are new into security. And so I was trying to make that transition from QA to security engineer. And I kept doing interviews and I kept getting turned down. And you know how frustrating that can be. It's like you put in all this time and you feel like it went well. And then a couple of days later, they send you an email and say, this isn't going to work out. So I think I did 5 or 6 failed interviews before I finally got that first opportunity. And I'm here to tell you that like that happens. And if you embrace that failure, if you say, this is the cost that I'm paying to do this thing that I really love, and you don't take it personally, you just let it roll off your back, you can always do more interviews, then you will get the opportunity that you want.
Did you come back to some of the interviewers and ask, what can I work on?
Absolutely.
What did I do wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the best things is like every time you do an interview, you get feedback. You can get feedback if you ask them. Sometimes they'll tell you, sometimes they'll suggest other things that you can learn about, but each interview is an opportunity to learn something and get a little bit stronger. And yeah, I got absolutely great feedback from I think each interview that I did. And I got some really good suggestions that ended up making me a much stronger security engineer in the long run. So even though I didn't get the job that I wanted, I did get the opportunity to learn stuff, which is always valuable.
Travis, in your discussion about Bandit, one of the things that really spoke to me was talked a little bit to some of the folks that are listening about how important teamwork is and sharing of ideas in your field.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, computer security is so complicated that nobody can know everything. In fact, one person can't even know everything about a narrow area of security. So yeah, it's all about sharing of ideas. Sometimes you'll have like a problem that you want to go solve. You'll talk to 5 other people. They'll have the same problem and you can team up and work on the idea together. Or sometimes you'll talk about an idea with somebody that does something totally different. And just in that conversation, you'll get a spark of the idea where it's like, I wonder if I could do this. Or you take something from a completely different discipline and you apply it to your area. I think the teamwork, working together, and the strength of your network is just so valuable. Every time that I talk to some of my smart friends doing cool things, I either learn something or enjoy myself or both.
Now, I want to kind of take you back to Cal State Long Beach and then on to your to the Santa Clara experience. What are some of the things that really you remember from both of those areas that have helped you in your upward, I'm going to call it your upward trajectory in this field?
Yeah, so actually at Cal State Long Beach, when I started, so I did a transfer from a junior college to Cal State Long Beach, and I really didn't understand what it takes to succeed at the upper level, and I didn't really have good discipline. And so actually my first year at Cal State Long Beach, I basically failed out. I failed, I think, significant amount of my classes. And Cal State Long Beach, one of the reasons that I have such a fond spot for this school is because the school did not give up on me. They said, you're struggling right now. Like, what is it going to take? Do you want to do this? Like, we can help you. And they were patient and they gave me another semester and they would continuously check in and help me with resources. And so because of that, I actually did end up getting through. But one of the things I had to learn was the way that you can apply your self-discipline to things that you don't necessarily love. So for example, the first year I actually failed art history twice. I don't know like how somebody can fail something twice. Looking back, it's not my fondest moment, but I'll tell you that, art history, like it didn't make sense to me. It didn't like make my heart sing, and I didn't have the discipline to do it anyway. And then I remember there was this, I think it was like marine biology class, and it was actually really interesting stuff, but my head wasn't in the right space. And learning how to just, okay, this is the material. Like, this is what they're going to ask me about. The teacher was very good about saying, this is what you need to know. And just learning how to learn and learning how to apply yourself to something that you don't necessarily want to be doing at the moment is super valuable, because a lot of times in industry, you have the same thing. You're like, I need to know X. And it feels really boring to get that base knowledge of X, but it's going to unlock an opportunity for you that you really want. And that's I would say, one of the biggest things that I learned at CSULB was that ability to just apply myself, discipline, and get through something that it doesn't feel like the most fun thing in the world right now.
I like that you have to be humble and say, okay, I'm failing. Who did you go to? How did, I know the resources were there, but they don't come to you, you go to them, right?
Totally.
So how did you come to that conclusion?
Well, I think my parents were really helpful. My parents are both educated. They were able to say, here's what it's really going to take for you to do this. And here's what your school offers. And like, you should go talk to this person, or, hey, this professor that you don't understand the material, they've got office hours. You can go talk to them. And sometimes if you talk to those professors and they understand that you are actually trying, you're just not understanding, they're willing to help you out. They're willing to do all kinds of things. And so just that, using the resources that are available is something that my parents really helped me to learn.
So you said that you moved on then to Santa Clara with the thought in mind that you needed to be up in that area because of the field you're in. So what did you learn at Santa Clara that you really have used a lot in your current career?
Yeah, I would say, my premise was kind of false. Like, you really don't need to go move somewhere else to start getting opportunities, especially now in COVID, a lot of things are online. A lot of the kind of meetups or like places where you'd engage with people are online forums. And so, I was wrong. You don't have to go move somewhere to get exposure to the network. I will say, like, some of the classes that I took at Santa Clara were great, to really give me that base level of foundation in computer security. I had always been studying it myself, but I really didn't have the fundamentals, the things that when you go get that first job, everybody's going to expect that you've been exposed to. And so some of the way that was presented to me at Santa Clara was really useful. And then there was also some really cool classes. Like, so for example, I don't remember the name of the class, but there's something that's like exploit development in C or C++ or something like that. And I found that fascinating, just the way that you can exploit the legitimate design of software and make the computer do something that the developer had never intended. Like, just the mechanics of how that works is so fascinating. And I'm really glad I had the opportunity to take that class.
So I would guess, though, that being near Silicon Valley, you would be around people at Santa Clara that were more, that were in that field as well. So that was not a bad idea to move up closer to the area where you wanted to work.
Sure. Yeah. The more people that you can get exposed to that have similar interests, like we were talking about earlier, you can bounce ideas off of each other. That's all useful. But, I'm sure that a lot of people at Cal State Long Beach are interested in computer security as well, or the surrounding area. So I would say that my premise that you had to move somewhere else to get started was false. There's always more resources available than you think.
Now, so did you think that not just your BS, but your graduate degree makes a difference in this field, or is it something that maybe some of our listeners are not involved in computer science in college, but can go into as well?
I would say, especially for computer security, it can be such a difficult field to get your first job into. And so anything that you can do to stand out really helps. So the information assurance degree that I got from Santa Clara did help, but there's a lot of different ways to do that aren't that particular path. For example, open source projects. Sometimes I mentor folks that are just starting off their career now, and I always tell them, whatever company that you want to go work at likely has some open source projects. And if nobody can tell you, or nobody will tell you that you can't start contributing to that project. So you can basically make your own internship. You sit there at home, you learn how the code works, you start making contributions. And then, whatever company it is, if it's Google or Facebook, if you're making contributions to their open source, then now all of a sudden they know exactly who you are and what you're capable of doing. And you don't have to get any permission. You don't have to get accepted or anything like that. You just start doing it yourself.
So when did you intern at all when you were at Cal State Long Beach or at Santa Clara, anywhere?
At Cal State Long Beach, I didn't. I did something a little different, a little less traditional. There was a railroad nearby, somewhere around San Pedro, and they wanted software. So that, they needed to do train management, like which trains have maintenance, which trains are available and stuff like that. And the way that they were doing it before was on paper with pencil. And it was, pretty error prone, and they were making mistakes. So actually, through somebody that I met coincidentally, they knew, that I could write software, and I knew that they had this problem. And then I ended up writing software for them. I think they paid me like $15,000 over the course of a few months. So it was, a great opportunity for me to learn how this business works and make some money. And it was a good opportunity for them because, if somebody other than a college student did it, they probably would have paid 10 times as much for it.
So it looks great on your resume as well. Are there any other instances or examples of some of the things that you did that were not internships, but kind of acted like internships in terms of some of the other jobs that you've gotten or taken?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So one thing that I would advocate that folks are interested in, particularly in computer security, check out is Owasp. Owasp is this organization that I'm part of. And basically what it is it's just a collection of professionals working on computer security stuff. And they have meetups, and you can go attend the meetup and listen, learn some new stuff from speakers. Usually they have like food and drinks, and then you can meet people. And so I would say, not exactly like an internship, but it's a great way to go and meet people that are doing similar work to you. And so, the hard way to get a job is you just apply, right? Because they get a ton of applications. It's hard to differentiate yourself. The easier way is that somebody that's hiring, and they're like, oh, what about Travis? Could he do this job? And then, that way it's much easier. It's the side door. And I always advocate for that. So the more opportunities you can go get exposed to people that are doing the kind of work that you want, the easier it's going to be for you.
So how did you get involved with Owasp? What does Owasp mean?
Yeah, Owasp. Yeah, it's a open web application security project. And basically it's a professional organization. It's a 501c3. They provide tools. So like, for example, there's a few things that like most security people are expected to know. And the Owasp top 10 is like one of those things. It's a list of like the top 10 security problems that people see in software. And they produce a bunch of other projects like that. There's something called Zap, which is it's called a software proxy, and it's used in security testing. And so Owasp as an organization produces these products. And the secret is that it's all volunteer run, and they definitely want your time. So if you have a little bit of extra time, you can spend 2 hours a month, like helping them organize meetups or, contributing to their projects. Like, they will be thrilled to have you. And it's just one more thing where you get exposure to more people, or you have something nice that you can put on your resume. And then employers are like, oh, I haven't seen that before. That looks interesting.
So for some of our listeners, is that if you don't have any kind of experience in computer science, is that something you should look into before you join Owasp for the benefits that you just mentioned? No,
just join. Maybe computer science would help you to understand some of the stuff, but a lot of the stuff is just running an organization. So, getting meetups going, like making sure that the speakers show up on time. Finding people that want to host you, like that's just volunteer work that anybody can really do, and it's hugely valuable. And in the process of doing this and contributing to something, then you make friends with people that are doing the kind of work maybe that you want to be doing.
Where are they located? Are they everywhere or?
Everywhere. Yep. There's a Owasp Los Angeles chapter. There's a Orange County chapter. There's tons of them.
Great. So not only do you get a chance to take advantage of some of the programs they have, but you also get to network when we start meeting up face to face. But even before then, you can still meet up with people through Zoom or other applications.
Totally, yeah. A lot of them are having online meetups. There's always communities, so you can go meet people even if you're stuck at your house like we all are right now.
Well, you mentioned presenting at conferences. Was that difficult for you to start doing, or I don't know, sometimes I don't have a problem talking in front of big crowds, but I know that's one of the hardest things for some folks.
Yeah, totally. So at this point, I think it's okay for me, but I don't know, I'll ask you, like that first time that you presented, was that like nerve-wracking? Because I know for me it was, and it's the sort of thing where you just have to get comfortable enough doing it so that your heart, stops racing every time you get in front of people. And yeah, the first 5 times I did it, it was really scary and I got nervous ahead of time. And now I kind of find it exhilarating. Like the opportunity to present your ideas to people is really fun.
Right. So how did you get invited to do that the first time? Is it because of your knowledge, the knowledge you were going to be bringing to the group? I guess that helps kind of get you into that whole invited to certain conferences.
Totally, yeah. So in the first case, it was Bandit. So people just, I was the most familiar with Bandit and how it worked, and people wanted that knowledge. And so from that, you can apply to security conferences and say, Bandit is really useful. It'll help you find Python security bugs. Here's how it works. Here's how you can get started with it and all of that kind of stuff. People want that knowledge because it saves them time. And so as security conference organizers, they want to put on their best program so that they make, they make their conference valuable. And so they, as a speaker with that knowledge, you're in demand. They want to connect with you. So yeah, like the Bandit really helped me get my foot in the door. And I presented that at a few conferences, and then I've been involved in a few other open source things, similar things. Like if I can present my ideas to someone else and save them time, that's valuable for the attendees.
So is presenting a skill that you feel strengthens your resume as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you have any tangible presentation, like things that you can reference, I think that is one of the things that companies always look for. It's called soft skills, and soft skills to some people sounds like it's like lower skills. It's like, oh, there's technical skills and there's soft skills, but actually what I find is that soft skills are the most desired. You can be the best in your field, and if you can't communicate your ideas to anybody else, then your impact's going to be limited. If you can't write an email that gets people to on the same page, same thing. So I really would advocate everybody focus on those things. How do you present ideas effectively? How do you write effectively? How do you get like turn conflict around? Like, that's all like one of the most common interview questions is like, tell me about a time when you had conflict with somebody and what did you do to resolve it? Companies are worried about that, right? Because they'll bring you in, you look great, and then you cause a problem with somebody else, or somebody else has a problem with you and the whole thing blows up. So companies really want to make sure that you have the soft skills so that you can be effective.
I think when I will admit that when I look at what computer science students would look like to me would be just like scientists and just like people that are not good at other communication. They're kind of focused in the science of it. And so what you just said is very important for some of our listeners. And yeah, if you could get along with people, because you just mentioned that sharing of your ideas and getting information back is going to be important. Totally.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And, you can get a job and you can have a career if you don't have soft skills. It's harder, but in order to continue to progress in your career, the soft skills become more important than your hard technical skills. And then, like if you ever want to go into management, it's basically all soft skills. I would say like 90 to 95% of what I do is soft skills. And at this point, like understanding things technically is such a small percentage of what I have to do.
But that's how you get it up to the people that make the decisions.
Totally, right, yeah. Yeah, good leaders really don't understand like the technical of what's going on. They just have the ability to find information when they don't know what's going on and resolve conflicts and communicate effectively.
So we have a question about, we know that you work at Netflix. So what does a day look like for you working at Netflix?
Sure, yeah, so I get up, do some exercise, get breakfast, say hi to my son and wife. And then I start off my day like everybody probably does, like reading through emails. Probably have like a good hour of email stuff to deal with. And then I would say most of our work, this is true when I was an engineer as well, is organized into like longer campaigns. So there's this problem that we're trying to solve. Like one of the ones I did at Netflix was least privilege. Least privilege in security is this thing where basically you're going to give users the least amount of permissions that they need to do whatever their job is. And then that helps if the application or user gets compromised, an attacker can't use those permissions against you. So this is the problem that we wanted to solve at Netflix. And then the actual approach is this very like long-tailed effort where like we have to build software that does this thing, and then we have to communicate how it works to the users. We have to, roll it out across and make sure that it's not breaking things. And so that's that's kind of a long campaign thing that I spent like 18 months on. And it's just, on any given day, like heads down for 5 or 6 hours, work through how to actually roll this thing out. So it's a lot of that. It's just like kind of like focus down, heads down time on how to solve a problem.
Well, a lot of us on this call are probably Netflix watchers, and I know I am, especially right now.
Thank you for that.
COVID. Yeah. Well, right now during COVID, you guys are doing really well. Any streaming services. And so this is a lot of the stuff that makes things work, and it's in the background and we don't see it. Because we do realize that there are a lot of dangers, a lot of ways that people can come in and hack whatever, right? So what kind of projects are you working on right now?
Okay, so the big project that we have right now is it's called self-service, and basically means this: we have, I don't know, thousands of developers. They're working on a lot of software projects, and what we want is them to own security for their applications. So there's a term in the industry called DevSecOps, which basically means that developers do everything. They develop and they test and they operate and they evangelize, and they also own security. So we have these developers and we want them to own security for their application because we care about security, and they should too. They want their application to be okay. And we hire experts in things. We hire machine learning experts, or data analysis experts, or back-end software experts. And what we want them to effectively own security without having to become security experts. And so the way that we do this is we do some automation and analysis that goes and looks at their application and looks at what controls it currently has and what controls that would make it much more secure. And then we automatically recommend those to developers in a way that's a list, so that they say, if I only have 2 hours to make security improvements, then I'm going to do this. And if I have 5 hours, then I'm going to do these 3 things. And that's our product, is like this way of making developers, giving them the right context to make security decisions for their applications.
So your primary customers internally are the developers?
Yes.
Okay. And I was reading through your LinkedIn. By the way, you've got a good LinkedIn site, so I'm sure that some of our listeners will be getting in touch with you.
Oh, thank you.
After today. But I read that, you've had 9 years of experience, and then you mentioned spanning people management. Can you explain to us what that means, people management?
Sure, yeah, people management. Yeah, I'm relatively new to people management. So the way that I think of it is like this. Netflix, we put a lot of effort into our hiring. We want to hire really good people, and keeping those people motivated to work on things, and keeping the team like working in the same direction, keeping people happy, making sure that the engineers have the right context to do their job. Like, that's what the people management is all about. I think of it as like this really nice, expensive sports car that Netflix trusted me to drive and not crash into the wall, by keeping these engineers that we care a lot about working effectively on the project. So that's what people management is to me, is like really, you have this team of people, and like, what can you do to make their lives easier? What can you do to remove barriers so that they can just focus on this thing that Netflix hired them to do?
Great. So you just mentioned before that you're working with the developers and giving them that context to secure their projects, right? So then you also mentioned that before you were responsible for securing one of the world's largest AWS environments. What does that mean? What is AWS?
Totally. Yeah, so a lot of Netflix runs in the cloud. And running the cloud means that instead of having this big server infrastructure like sitting in a data center or something, we basically just outsource that service to AWS, Amazon Web Services.
Okay.
Amazon's really good at providing cloud servers. And so what we do is, instead of, like in the old days when I worked at Symantec, if we wanted, I was a tester, so I would want a server to run tests on. And I would have to tell somebody, I want, this server with these specs, and then they would do an order, and it would take like a month and a half, and then later I would get the server and I'd run my tests, and then it would be like just sitting there unused. What we can do instead now is we can make one API call in software, and Amazon will spin up this server. I run my tests, and then I can tear the thing down. That's what's so cool about AWS, the cloud provider. And then securing it comes with a lot of challenges. So, many the attendees, like if you're interested in computer security, you'll probably have heard of like OpenS3 buckets, for example. This is when basically companies end up putting data that's supposed to be sensitive in a bucket that's exposed to the world. So anybody can just come and find it and read it. It sounds like kind of a simple mistake, but it's actually relatively easy to make. And so that's an example of the kind of thing that my team did before and the kind of projects I was working on there. Or, when I mentioned least privilege, how can we apply this thing across the fleet? We've got thousands of apps. How can we make sure that each one has a least privilege policy? And that's a security principle that AWS gives you, but you have to set it up correctly. So that's what my team did.
So you've got a lot of expertise that you've built up. And I also noticed on your LinkedIn that you advise startups on a range of security topics. Is that separate from Netflix?
Yeah, separate from Netflix. In my evening hours. I find that a lot of fun. Netflix is a fantastic company to work for. I would not consider them to be a startup. Startups have different kind of security concerns. A lot of times they're just getting started. They maybe have like one security engineer working for them. And what they need to do is they need to do a lot of setting things up right with very little resources. And I find that problem of how can startups have effective security really interesting. So it's really fun to work with them.
That's great. Now, I was looking also, again, LinkedIn gave me a lot of info on you. So, and I'm not a big, for my age, I'm not a big LinkedIn expert. But your previous jobs before Netflix, like as AppSec engineering manager, senior cloud security manager, being an advisor at another company, and also I think working at IBM as a senior architect. What are some of the things that you learned at those jobs that have really helped you in your current job at Netflix?
I'd say that's a great question. I'd say the biggest thing that I learned since starting off in my career was just like the scale challenges associated with some security things. So, I used to think, like when I was first entering the industry, like, okay, patches, like everybody's been saying forever to just patch everything. Like, why is that a problem? Why can't we just apply all the patches everywhere? And there's a ton of organizational confusion that makes that hard. So like, let's say we want to patch all of our stuff for this new vulnerability. We don't even have a list of all of our machines that exist. Like, that problem is very hard. And then we don't know if the patch has been applied necessarily or not. Sometimes patches, at a big enough scale break things. And so I would say, like, when I was a student, I would study and I would say, like, security sounds so simple. And the reason that it's not simple is because companies are really big and there's a lot going on, and keeping track of all of that is really difficult. So I would say, like, that's probably the thing that I've learned the most being at a lot of different companies, is just seeing, like, even though the product's different and the way that they're approaching it is different, that part always stays the same. There's a lot going on and it's just really hard to manage at scale.
We have a question also that says, what would be some suggestions? This is more of a general question. So what suggestions would you have for a first generation graduate that's transitioning into the professional world in terms of, one, succeeding in the role, and two, setting themselves up for the long-term success?
Sure, yes. Yeah, so I would say that the number one thing that I would recommend is, like, to figure out what it is that you want to do. Or at least if you don't figure it out, to just get more clarity over time. And the best way, I think, to do that is to go and talk to people that are doing it. One of the things that I've learned is that people are much more generous with their time than you think that they're going to be. And so, a lot of times, like, if you find 10 people that are doing the kind of job that you want to do, and you say, hey, I'm just getting started, I'm really interested in what you do, would you be willing to spend some time with me? I bet you 80% of those people are going to say yes. And you can learn a ton from them. They're further ahead than you are in whatever career path, and just spend some time talking to people. And if they can teach you things that you want to know, ask them about formal mentorship. Just say, hey, would you be willing to spend some time with me, once every 3 months, and teach me some of the stuff that you know? A lot of people are going to say yes to that. And the reason that they'll say yes is because, you know, they feel like they've done well, they want to give back. And also it is actually very gratifying to see people, to help people succeed. So I found that, you know, mentors can be extremely valuable, and, you know, just go out there and ask.
So I also read, which I'm surprised again because of the field, and I could be wrong because I'm an extrovert. I'm really into communication and stuff, but you say that you are an extrovert, and that I feel is, do you run into a lot of extroverts in your field?
You know, what's interesting about the introvert and extrovert thing is I had the wrong idea about what it meant when I first started dealing with it. I thought that it meant, like, you know, extroverts are like really good at talking to people and introverts aren't. And what it, like, the actual meaning is that extroverts they feel like more refreshed and stronger when they talk to people, and introverts feel more drained. And so that's the only difference. Like some of the biggest introverts that I know are some of the best communicators. And yeah, I am an extrovert. I do enjoy talking to people. You know, for example, like after doing this today, I'm gonna have a rush for like an hour and a half. Whereas my wife is an introvert, this would drain her, but she's, you know, as good of a communicator as I am. And you know, people will surprise you.
Yeah, that's what I try to explain to people about being an extrovert is I get my energy from others.
Yeah.
And I learn from others. So I'm glad you answered that question. So the other thing in terms of the field that you're in, you're involved in podcasts, you're involved with that Owasp group, and you work on other teams, like you talk about the Cloud Foundry Security Team. So how do these all help you with what your current job is too? Does it help kind of pick up your game?
Totally. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say, I think it's been debunked, but there was this like 10,000 hours theory where, like, to get mastery at something, you spend 10,000 hours on it. And that's like grossly oversimplified. But what is true is that the more time that you spend working on something, the better. And, you know, in your career, you're only going to have so many opportunities to organize a group and do things like that. And so doing some of the extracurricular versions of that have really helped me to get more experience doing that kind of work than I would have had, like, just doing it in my day job. And that stuff really helped to set me up to be more effective as a manager. So yeah, so I guess, again, you know, like, whatever it is that people want to do, like, go and look for opportunities to exercise that, and you'll get better at it faster than you would if you just wait for opportunities to come.
So another question is, how do you go about breaking down and debugging complex problems? Are there any tools or methods that have been particularly helpful in staying organized along the way?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's some tools like, you know, mind mapping. There's this mind node thing for the iPad that, you know, like, I would say the hardest part is to just get started, right? To just say, wow, this thing seems really big. You know, I'm avoiding it. And then just, like, you know, one foot in front of the other. Like, once you get into a groove on a problem, then it's much easier. So one thing that I'll do is I'll open up a doc or a mind node thing, and I'll just start throwing ideas there. And then the organization comes later. But the more it gets your brain in this mode where there's no wrong answers, and anything that comes, it's a much more creative state. And I found, like, even if I have to write a document for work, right? It's like, wow, this document has to be really good. So, like, getting started on that's daunting. But if you just start writing stuff and then you organize it later, then it's much easier. So yeah, I would say kind of just whatever you do to get started, just, you know, take a few steps and then you'll kind of get in a groove, is what I usually find.
Now, what has COVID done for your industry and even Netflix in general? Has it upped your game?
No.
Or
no.
it overwhelmed you?
Yeah, I would say more of the latter. So, you know, Netflix is so there's some companies that do remote first, like they've always been remote, like GitHub is an example of that. Netflix is not one of those companies. We liked our office and our in-person meetings and all of that stuff. So we were, you know, forced into being remote versus voluntarily going. So for us, it's kind of jarring. We need to build new habits and ways of interacting. I would say I read articles about, you know, in, like, New York Times, where it's like, oh yeah, these companies are surprisingly more effective. I don't believe it. I don't think anybody's more effective because, you know, in addition to being remote, like, you know, not by choice, people have kids at home, and, like, there's all kinds of other, you know, like, the world's a tough place right now. There's all this, like, extra noise that I think probably makes everybody less effective.
No, I can understand that. And yes, you're right. I'm sure people say, well, these are tech people. They probably love that they don't have to go into the office. But there are the interaction with live people is good.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard is like, so a lot of tech is now has these open office floor plans. And so like people are, sitting next to each other at cubicles and it's noisy. So some people have not been able to be effective in the open office floor plans and now they're at home and it's quiet. And some people are saving on like pretty long commutes. But all things being equal, I would say, these are hard times and we're all less effective than we would normally be. And that's okay. Like we don't all have to be exactly as effective. Like the pandemic won't last forever. We can all be patient with each other. Yeah. And then it'll hopefully be better pretty soon.
Is there still a project you want to work on or a professional goal you still want to accomplish?
Oh yeah, all kinds of professional goals. So I've thought to myself a lot about different opportunities. One thing that could be fun is to go start a company, go be a founder. It always seems like such an exciting path to be on. So I may do that at some point. I think, one of the things I like about being a manager is some of the things that we do can have such large impact. For example, if you get somebody and you motivate them to do their best work, like that has more impact that you can have yourself sometimes. And as you go up the career ladder, that can be even more true. So you think about these companies where, they've got all the right pieces. They have a product that they can produce that people want. They've got great talent, but it's not being run well. And the ability of a really good manager to turn that around is exciting. So I might want to do like more higher opportunities for management. I'm really, I guess one of the things about my personality is I'm excited about everything. So I haven't really decided yet, but it all seems exciting to me.
That's good. And that's important. I always tell people you have to have a job that feeds your soul, that wants you to get even more. So I know pre-COVID and COVID, what are some of the things you would recommend to make sure you've got a work-life balance? It's a little different now because you got to stay home, and that probably helps you with some of the family stuff. But what were you doing before, and what are you still doing now?
Yeah, what's been keeping me the most happy in COVID is exercise. I'm sure I'm alone, but one of the things that we do is, I live in a place where you can walk outside a lot. That kind of thing makes me happy. I've been doing some exercise programs in my garage, things like that. So pre and post COVID, I'd say like the exercise is a really nice balance. I've got a son, he's 2 years old, he's amazing, and my wife. So spending time with them and like showing him things and going on family trips, that's all nice. The work-life balance is super important. I see this field is very prone to people burning out, and the way that you don't burn out is you keep that balance.
Great. I think we've gone through most of the questions. What would be your kind of a wrap up in terms of today's talk, in terms of what you would recommend to some of our listeners in terms of lessons learned in the big, in the big picture?
Sure. Yeah. So figure out what you want to do that by talking to people, build a network, be good to people. The industry may seem large, but it's surprisingly small, and what you put out is going to come back at some point. So be good to people, be selfless with your time, help people out. And if you look for non-traditional ways to get started, so open source projects, meetups, like these are ways that you can just go do, and nobody, versus an internship, you have to go apply, only one person gets it. These are things that anybody can do. So look for more opportunities to do stuff like that. Really focus on the soft skills, the leverage that they're going to have. If you learn Java right now, Java might not even be like a thing that people care about in 15 years, but soft skills are timeless. They will always, those same soft skills are going to carry you through your career. So really work through those and go and reach out to people for mentorship. They're going to surprise you and be really helpful to you. I've probably had 15 or 20 people that have mentored me in my career, and it's helped me a ton.
Is there another group besides that, what was it, the Owasp, that you might want to share with the listeners?
I think Owasp is a good one to get started, but wherever go to meetup.com, look for people that are doing similar things to whatever you're interested in, And you'll probably be surprised with how many folks around that are doing stuff.
Got another question. How would you suggest going about proposing an idea to management IT, particularly in terms of introducing a new technology to optimize work processes? Have you ever had to do that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. So a few parts of that. I like that question a lot. So the first thing, it's a business. And so the number one reason that people are going to do it or not is the business value. And so being like really upfront about like, this is why this is a problem for us. There's like thousands of things that you could pursue. This is why I think that this one's really important for us. Here's how it's going to help us. Being upfront about the risks too. So like, any project's going to carry costs. You have to, like, if it's software, you're going to have to develop it. You're going to have to maintain it. Being really upfront with those costs and doing a good job of estimating, like, even though it's going to cost this, the impact is going to be here. So we think that it's worth doing that. So really like putting on that business hat and communicating in the way that leadership cares about. Leadership doesn't care about the technical parts of your decision. They just care about how is this going to help the business and what are the risks associated with it.
So I think this is for any kind of field. When you're working for, whether it's a small company or a large company, it's good to know what about the company, what is their strategy, their long-term strategy, what are their issues and and what are their strengths, and then you can kind of do what you just said. If you don't know your company, you're not going to know what makes sense for them and what you can take to management that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Managers love their KPIs, their performance indicators. So learn what are the performance indicators that your boss and your boss's boss and their boss, what are the things that they care about? And the more that you can tie the value of your project to those things that they care about and measure, the better.
Great. Well, I know I've enjoyed my talk today, your talk today. I've learned a lot, and I'm not a techie. But I really want to thank you, and I'm going to turn it back over to Noemi. I don't see any other questions. So thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Noemi?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Travis. If there's anyone that wants to connect with you, are you okay if they look for you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Great. And I look forward to sometime meeting you when this whole COVID crisis is gone. We'd love to get you engaged on campus.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm way overdue for a return to campus visit.
Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah.
Let us know.
We'll
let you know once we're open. We invite you back to campus.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Travis, so much. Thank you, Lucia, for another wonderful chat. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And just a reminder to follow us on social media at CSUB Alumni to learn about future chats like this. And just a reminder, this was recorded and it will be up on our website in a couple of days. Thank you so much and have a great day.